Hey guys! Last Sunday a question was texted in. What is Jesus talking about with these old and new wineskins? That is a great question. In fact, I have some follow-up questions like what is a wineskin? And why does your wine have skin? And what kind of wine are you drinking? All that to say, it was a great question that required a point leftovers. So without further ado, here are this week's point leftovers.
In Matthew chapter 8 and 9, Matthew talks about a lot of Jesus' miracles, showing Jesus' power and his authority over all kinds of things. In the middle of these two chapters, there's a little break. And the break comes where two different groups challenge Jesus. The first group, the Pharisees, the religious leaders, they challenge Jesus indirectly by attacking his disciples. They say, how come your leader, how come Jesus eats with sinners? And Jesus responds to them, dismissing their question. Then comes another group, the disciples of John the Baptist, and perhaps you'd wonder, why would the disciples of John the Baptist be there? See, if you remember, John, when Jesus was baptized, made it really clear that Jesus was greater than him. So you would have thought the disciples would have left John and begun following Jesus. But they're clinging instead to John. They come and they ask Jesus this question. They say, why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not? And Jesus, he begins his answer in a weird way. He talks about a bridegroom coming, and when the bridegroom comes, who can mourn? When the bridegroom comes, it's time for a celebration. It's a party. There's a happy thing that's happening. Well, in John chapter 3, John himself, John the Baptist, describes Jesus as the bridegroom who's coming. So Jesus is speaking to his disciples saying, look, I'm that one that your very own leader has talked about. He says, why would we mourn when something new and joyful is here? But then he goes on to talk about taking and patching an old skin or an old coat and using old wineskins. And the question text in was, what is this wineskin all about? Well, when you make wine, normally they would put it at the time in jars, clay jars, but those were expensive and heavy. And if you couldn't afford clay jars, you would use wines, or you'd use animal skins, kind of like leather, and you would make a sack, a pouch that you would use to hold the wine. And wine, as it ferments, it expands and it stretches. And so if you take new wine and put it in a new wine sack, the leather, the material, the skin has enough room to stretch and grow with it. But if you take new wine and you put it in old wineskins that have already stretched and have already been pulled to the fullest, what happens when the new wine begins to expand and release gas? Those old wineskins will burst. The Pharisees and the disciples of John, they come to Jesus and say, how come you and your disciples don't look like what we are used to? You don't act like what we're expecting. You don't really fit with the mold of faith and religion that we've been taught. And Jesus' answer is really simple. We can't fit within that mold because we're something new altogether. Specifically, Jesus is saying, I am something new altogether. I'm not like that old understanding of faith that gave you a list of to-dos, of rules, of things to do better, but instead I am filled with joy like a groom on a wedding day. I've come with all kinds of new life. And for those of you caught up in this old understanding and this old pattern, you need to go back and revisit it with a new perspective. That I am the one who has all this authority and all of this power and all of this love for you. The rest of the chapter continues, and Jesus goes back to doing miracles, goes back to demonstrating his love and his power and showing these people that he is who he says he is. What are these old and new wineskins? Sometimes we have a preconceived understanding of who Jesus or God is supposed to be. We have a preconceived bias of what we think he's supposed to be like. But when we come to him not with our understanding, but with a fresh perspective. Jesus, we want to see you for who you are. We want to see the things you do for what you do. Help us to be new wineskins filled with you.
Thanks for watching, guys. Has there been any old understandings or new ways of thinking that God's been teaching you? If so, let us know in the comments. And we will see you on Sunday at 10:30 a.m. at the Downtown West Regal Cinema, where you're always welcome to come as you are and text in any questions. Thanks for watching Point Leftovers. Bye.